edition of the Serbian Football Show, as we are here today to discuss the victory that we had yesterday against Ireland to start the World Cup qualifying campaign. Our post-game show here today. Thank you for joining us. This is your host, Milos, of course, and I have a few of my buddies with me here today. Luca, I know it's sad for you. You just got back from Mexico, but how are you doing?
Hey man, I'm sad I'm not in Mexico, but very happy that Serbia opened up with a win, man. So overall, I'm elated, dude.
Damn right. And our man Veli from Australia. Veli, how's it in Adelaide? How's it going, mate?
Listen, guys, I really feel left out, right? Like Alex, you're going to say hello to in a second. He's in and out of Chicago. Luca went to Costa Guatemala, Mexico, Rico, wherever he went to, he's going up and down. And we all know that Milos basically owns Canada, and I have to be stuck here on the corner of the earth where absolutely, thankfully, everything is okay, but I'm not allowed to move. It's just extraordinary. You know what I mean? So the football is the only thing, Serbian football is the only thing that's keeping me sane.
That's saying a lot when, Serbian football is the only thing keeping you sane in this world. And
it's
Alex,
actually probably more a reflection of my personal life and life in general than the football itself.
That's right. Alex, I know you just got back to Serbia from Chicago. How's your flight? How's everything?
The road warrior travels aimlessly through the passage of time, but victory makes a 9-hour flight seem like a 3-hour flight. So despite the fact I'm tired as hell, I've actually been in pretty good shape considering the win. And I'm excited to get it going, man. It's been a while since we started a qualifying cycle with a win, so let's just make the most of it.
That's right. It's been a very long while since we started a qualifying cycle with a win. I believe the last one was the Euro 2012 qualifying when we beat the Faroe Islands to start the campaign in 2010. So it's literally been over years since we won to start the campaign, which says a lot on its own, but let's talk about the big game, the big win yesterday against Ireland, 3-2 goals by Mitrovic with the double, the brace, and Dusan Vlahovic with the first goal in the first half there after we went down a goal. What's to say about the game? The result is the most important thing. 3-2 against our main competition for second place, or our top two finish. Obviously, we don't want to give Portugal first place, but realistically, we'll be fighting with Ireland for second place. Massive win, massive result. Very impressive considering that Pixie only had 2 training sessions with the team. He also took a pretty big risk by resting some key players. I know we were all pretty shocked when we saw Uroš Stracic getting his first national team start in midfield alongside Saša Lukic of all people. And then Milan Gajic on the right-hand side, which, we all can agree he's basically our third string right wing back, and he got to start. It's understandable. We have 3 games in 1 week. You have to rest players. Nobody can play all 3 games, but it was a big risk because this was pretty much a must not lose or must win game. But in the end, it worked out. We were able to rest some players. We'll have fresh legs, like Darko Lazovic will be fresh-legged. Kostic only played a half as well. These guys will have fresh legs for Portugal on Saturday, so that's a great thing. And overall, the performance, I think, was pretty solid. Even when we went down a goal, I didn't think it was a disaster. I thought we were doing pretty well with the passing and the possession. So nothing to be too negative about, except of course, the usual defensive mistakes that we were making, the gift for the second Irish goal and all that. All in all, very happy with the result. Great debut for Pixie. He showed a lot in this game. He made the correct adjustments when we went down a goal. He moved Tadic back behind Juricic and Vlahovic to give him more space, and that opened up the Irish and made our attacks more dangerous. Luca, what were your thoughts on the game? How are you feeling right now?
Man, let me start by saying overly positive thoughts. Obviously, still some glaring mistakes, like the second Irish goal, which we pretty much just gifted them. It seems like we give a gift of a goal to every team that we play. But you can tell because I watched the Pixies, post-game conference and everything. You can tell it's still a work in progress. As you said, man, you had 2 days with the team. the fact that we were able to get this victory against an Irish team that definitely came to play. They were running their asses off. They were physical. They came to play even though they were, missing players or not as a quality side as they used to be. They definitely came to play, and the boys weathered the early storm, were able to get their composure, and ultimately get the win. It's still a work in progress, as in Pixie, even he himself admitted, I think he started Tadic up there on the front line, but when he brought in Tadic behind the two strikers, then Tadic actually started to play more, made more incisive passes, opened up the defense more, all of those things. A lot of positives from this, more so positives than negatives, obviously, because we won. One is obviously Dusan Vlahovic played like a stud out there. I think, as far as he's concerned, the mistake that I don't think Pixie should make is to start Mitrovic, even though he had a arguably better game than Vlahovic because he scored 2 goals and both of them were beauties. But Vlahovic's goal as well, man, just like that first time finish from that angle was a killer as well. I think to instill confidence in Vlahovic, you start him again. And I think you bring Mitrovic off the bench when the defense is tired and Mitrovic can bully them with his size and presence there. So I would definitely caution Pixie against, making some changes up front, because I think, especially for changing Mitrovic for Vlahovic. Midfield, obviously, as you said, Miller's a little surprising, to say the least, when we saw that lineup. Overall, I thought the boys did good, though. And, also the subs for Stojkovic were spot on, it must be said. Even when Kostic came on, even when he brought on Gude to shore up the defense. And then on the defense, of course, once again, mistake after mistake, gifting goals. However, one bright spot, it has to be said, is Pavlovic. He was our best defender by far, intercepted a lot of Ireland's attacks, and then brought the ball up and fed Tadic, especially for Mitro's second goal, that lob. He was the one who gave Tadic the ball after a Ireland attack. And he turned defense into offense, and Tadic was able to feed Mitrovic, and Mitrovic was able to finish it beautifully. The most beautiful goal he scored in his career, he even says so himself. So overall, extremely happy. You can tell it's a work in progress, but the fact that we got our first win in 11 years to start a qualifying cycle, I think that says a lot, and I think it says a lot that we got it against our direct competitor for second place in Ireland. So overall, I'm very happy.
It also says a lot. This is, it's a come from behind win, and we don't have many come from behind wins in recent memory. And Pixie said in his post game, which was I really liked this comment. He said, when we went down 1 goal, I had no doubt that we were going to come back.
Right.
And that just shows me that he was prepared. And he was prepared because he made the necessary adjustment with Tadic to change the game. And hats off to him. And Luca, you mentioned Ireland played really well. I watched most of their Nations League games, and this is the best I've seen them look. They were pressing us so well. They were moving really well. Their speed with Robinson and Connolly, there were a lot of problems. They had pretty good passing, really aggressive, organized team. And they played really, really well. And I know they were missing a lot of players, but, maybe clearly those players might have trouble getting back in the team, because I think their side looked the best I've seen them in a while. And the one, of course, they had their third string goalkeeper playing, which you could tell by how far out and how lost he was on that Mitrovic goal. But,
right.
It is what it is. They looked really good, and I don't think they should definitely be proud of their performance, and I think they're going to cause every team in our group trouble if they play like that. And so, as you mentioned, it's a lot of positives. Pavlovic, hats off to him. I think we were all surprised to see him start as well. I think most people thought Spajic would start there, but Pixie gave him the start, and he played fantastic, and hopefully we'll see more of that to come. Veli, what were your thoughts on that early morning when you were watching the game from Australia?
Yeah, again, I got to agree with you both, but we talked about it in our chat during the game, didn't we? That Ireland were really good. I actually, I know that our listeners spike up before any game that we play from anybody from the United Kingdom or the Republic of Ireland, and that they were great. I actually thought they were really, really solid. They had a really well worked first goal. It was actually nice to watch. Do you know what I mean? Nice header, nice cross, all that type of stuff, and well done them. there was a little bit of nostalgia about the game, because I actually thought for the first 30 to 40 minutes we were playing to impress the boss. Do you know what I mean? Like, no, it was rather cagey, it was rather cautious, it was rather, let's be sure of ourselves, because we don't want to upset the boss, who obviously is a legend. But it was nostalgic, and the fact is that I remember a lot of games that Pixie played in the 80s, and then leading up to the qualifying for the World Cup in 1990, and then the European Championships, unfortunately, we didn't go to in 1992. We went down a lot. And then we went down a lot, and then we came back in the second half and scored 3 or scored 4 or whatever it is. And back when I was a boy, I remember this game against Scotland. Ironically, there was a couple of games against Northern Ireland, against Austria, and all that. They drew, they equalised, and then we banged in 3 in the second half, or we went down and we banged 3 or 4 in the second half. So there was a bit of a nostalgia there. I think what happened was, part was rather interesting. I absolutely agree with you, boys. Ireland tried really hard to get us in the press. Scotland, that worked for Scotland so well, but Scotland tended to press us towards the sidelines, while Ireland tried to press us throughout the middle. Although their lineup was 4 at the back, it was more likely it was 5. Do you know what I mean? So they really tried to strangle us, throughout the middle. And then what happened was, when Tadic came and a lot deeper in the second half, or in the latter stages of the first half and in the second half, they found Ireland with a player too many at the back, and then Tadic had that space just behind them. Now, I think what happened as well is, where I thought, Dragan Stojkovic had that masterstroke, is he brought Mitrovic on, and although Ireland started to tire, and then what happened was that we caught them on the transition, not necessarily on the break, but it was the transition. And we've talked about this on the pod before. Modern football is all about what you're doing in the first 3 to 4 seconds when you've lost the ball, or what the first 3 to 4 seconds when you've gained the ball.
Oh yeah. And
I think that was the big catalyst in what happened when Mitrovic scored that fine lob, but then the Irish defence was really tired, and Mitrovic just soared above them to score that fantastic header. The only thing, guys, we conceded a horrible goal at the end. To me, yes, it looked straight away it was like Stefan Mitrovic's fault with that weak back header. But that action right before it, when we outnumbered that Irish striker 3-1 on the byline, and he had no room, that ball should have hit Rosette. Do you know what I mean? At that time of the game, and we allowed him to get past, of which then it led to that action where Ireland scored their second goal. That was the only dampener. It was a result that counts. And again, I agree with you. If you didn't say it, I would have made it. But I'm thankful that you guys said it first. I believe, we had that thing whereby if we went down, we were gonna come back. We just had that optimism about us. But to me, it was definitely nostalgic. It reminded me of many games that Pixie played in under Ivica Osim in the mid to late 80s and then early 90s. We went one down, or we got a goal to make it equalise, but we knocked in 3 to 4 in the second half, and let's hope that continues.
That's really great points, Valley. And I think our passing was also, if you compare this to the Scotland game, I think our passing was a lot faster and quicker as well. Even when we were struggling to break Ireland down, we were moving the ball around a lot quicker and looking for more options than we were in that horrible Scotland game in the playoff final. Alex,
I'll tell you what, Milan Gage didn't disgrace himself either. Do you know what I mean? As he's playing the full 90 minutes. So that was nice to see. Alex, sorry, brother.
Yeah, he did all right. I think he had some moments where he looked a little lost, and I think that one moment where Tadic looked really upset at him as well when he went offside. But he did okay. I'm sure he'll get another chance. Go ahead, Alexa.
No, I think you guys said everything very adequately. was a weird game. It was a strange game in many ways. That we beat a team that, even on paper in its best form, were probably better than if we were to match up the best Irish team against the best Serbian team. We would all agree that in terms of talent, we're better than them. They were missing 4 or 5 players that you could argue were crucial for them. Guys like Shane Duffy and Darren Randolph and McGoldrick and guys like that. Yet we played this game with a new manager, with a really switched-up team. A lot of guys that would have been starters didn't play. We scored 3 beautiful goals, and we conceded two, I don't want to say stupid goals, but 2 very cheap goals. So it was everything we were hoping, or maybe not hoping, Pixie would bring to the table, and it was definitely disappointing for me to not be able to depend on some of the midfield options that came in. I was actually very happy that Radrić and Lukic got their starts. But I would have preferred to have seen Sasha Lukic in a more forward role. I understand that one of the big issues that this team has is the inability to pass out of the back and to create chances from midfield. I think we've shown that on counterattacks and set pieces even we can be very threatening and very dangerous, but we needed to find a way to break that press, and it just wasn't happening. Lukic, I think, is somebody who at this point might be more adequate, pushed in a more forward role, maybe playing with Đuričić and Tadić and some of those other guys are playing. Radrić started the game off very slowly, and progressively as the game got more into the advanced stages, he ended up getting better. I think it really helped that Maksimovic came in and had a great game. He really came in and shored things up and managed to limit Cullen and all the other guys that were pressing as hard in midfield. And one of the things that I also noticed that was very adequate was that we were going through the middle a lot more. In the Tomakovic 3-5-2 system, we were going through the wing backs a lot. Now, if we had Lazovic and Kostic in this particular game, we would have probably gone through them as well. But we had 2 guys that aren't bad players, but they're basically debutants in a new team, new formation, new everything, new style of play. So we went through the middle a lot more, which was very interesting. And it was nice to see that we used our individual qualities to create a goal really out of nothing, because we weren't there in the first 30-some-odd minutes. I actually was watching the game on a delayed stream because, travel things and whatnot, and in the 20th minute it kind of cut off, and so I switched to the 30-something minute when it was going on live, and I saw that we didn't miss anything, so that just goes to show you how much we were out of the game. And I completely agree with Veli's point that he made in the chat, and that Lucas said as well. I thought Ireland was really, really good, considering this was their first real test, and they handled it very well, and they played some nice stuff. I mean, they passed the ball around well. They made some nice tactical adjustments as far as playing Matt Doherty in a winger position, which is probably the best place for him considering his lack of form. They changed up the center backs. They dropped Shane Duffy, which was controversial, but maybe the right call. And it was just because of our individual quality that we managed to pull this one off. But our individual quality is really, really, really good. Vlahovic's goal was fantastic. The whole game he was very active. Even in the early goings, he was holding the ball up. He was creating chances. He was moving into the box, and all of the traits that you want to see a modern striker have. I mean, that finish is just the most experienced finish you could possibly have. His first time, ball comes to him on it drops down on a bounce, and he just looks like almost in slow motion. Just looks where the angle is and just slots it calmly past the goalkeeper. So that finish was great, and we needed that. And it was also nice to see us use our attacking midfield players almost as target men, because Đuričić and Tadić in those parts of the game were actually using their head a lot more than their feet. The goal came from Tadić knocking the ball on with his head, which I actually like. We shouldn't always keep the ball on the ground with those guys. Tadić, as usual, was amazing. I mean, all of his crosses were on point. He gets 3 assists in Pixie's debut, and many people have mentioned the coach-player dynamic, where the player is more coach and his playing formula that works. I mean,
Alex, you're cutting out.
Yeah, it's cutting in and out a little bit, man. But
yeah,
go ahead, man. Finish up.
Well, I'll finish up real quick. I'll just make a point that just changed. I think the substitution, especially just the last thing I'll point out to close out, because I think there's somebody telling me I need to close out, whether it's Maynard or not, is Mitrovic. I mean, the goal he scored, I'll just say this, that goal is one of the 5 prettiest goals in national team history. To chip the goalkeeper from that distance, first time, to show all of the football qualities that everybody debated. Everybody says he's just a target man. He just scores with his head. He doesn't really do anything else. that's a goal if Messi scores is being replayed for weeks and months even. And not only that, but to show the mental character as well. I mean, because he's had a very hard 4 months. He's been out of form. He hasn't been playing for his club. He got a lot of criticism for the missed penalty, and then to score 2 goals like that, all the credit in the world goes to him. It just shows that guy goes out and gives everything he has every single game and keeps scoring. And I would argue maybe he's the option for Portugal. I don't necessarily agree with Vlahovic starting. I think that Mitrovic scored against Portugal already, and I think that his size and his strength, and considering that he's now back into form, and it's not the first time that he's been scoring goals for the national team when he wasn't playing at club level, I think it gives him the case that he's going to start. The problem is, what are we going to do with the rest of the team, and how are we going to fit SMS? Because he didn't even get an appearance even from the subs bench, which I thought was interesting. So where do you play him? Do you stick him behind the striker? Do you stick him more in midfield? That's really the X factor, I think, for the game. If we can find a position for him, I think that we might have a shot to upset them because, if anything, we have the size to match Portugal in midfield, and we're going to have our wingbacks healthy. I think it was very good that Kostic and Lazovic didn't get many minutes because we don't really have many substitutions for that position. And I think if anybody can threaten Portugal in the fullbacks that they have, it's the pace that we have. Because Kostic and Lazovic maybe aren't better footballers than Cancelo and Rafa Guerrero and guys like that, but they are physically more adequate. Their pace, their running ability, their physicality, especially would be good in a counter-attacking system, which is what I think we're going to go. I'm not sure Pixie's going to go in an attacking possession-based style like we did today. So it leaves a lot of questions open for the Portugal game, but I thought the performance against the Irish team was fairly solid. I think the center-back situation is going to develop itself over time when we have everyone available, Nastasic, Milunovic, Spajic, and guys like that. And to close out, we all said before the start of this qualifying cycle that Pixie bringing him in was a 4-year plan, or certainly a long-term plan, and especially considering the style of football he wants to play, that's going to take a long time to develop, and it's unrealistic after, like you guys said, 2 practices and a couple of days together that system was going to be put into place. So I think as time's going to go on, it's going to be better and better, and I think this whole qualifying cycle is going to be a really good test for the March playoffs that are going to be next year, because I'm pretty sure this win has basically put us there, because I don't really see us dropping points to Luxembourg and Azerbaijan, touch wood. And I think if we fix some of the defensive mistakes, just in terms of organization and positioning, I don't think it was a matter of them being scared. I don't think it was a matter of them lacking the quality. It's just some communication things that are expected. It's their first game under a new manager, new system. I think if we can fix that by March, Qatar seems a possibility, because our attacking talents are absolutely good enough to not just be there. Our attacking talents are good enough to catapult us to the group, because you look at Vlahovic and Mitrovic, just the 2 of them, and you even have Jovic and Despotovic who could come in. And then the depth we have in midfield. We can see Grujic and Ilic maybe getting minutes at some point in the Azerbaijan game, even though we haven't touched on that. But our depth from midfield onwards is frighteningly good. For not just our standards, for general standards. It's such a shame that the defensive situation is as what it is. But you're always going to have, there's only 7 million people. We don't have 50 million to choose from, so you're always going to have holes in the team you're going to have to plug. But I'm liking what Pixie's doing. I like the fact he went all out in terms of the subs. He put on 2 strikers. He put on, more attacking players. He's sticking true to his word, and I think he prepared the game very well. And I'm very happy he got a win. It was very important for us to win this game. However we know, doesn't matter how, doesn't matter if it's ugly, if it's pretty. It helped that it was pretty. It's pretty in the attack, it's ugly in the defense. Hopefully it's pretty on both sides, and I think that if we play up to our potential, we could be really, really good. And I think Pixie, with this game, showed that when we're at our best, we can be a very big threat to anybody, but when we're at our worst, it's hard to watch. So, the usual.
Yeah, the usual.
Alex made a really good point. Only 7 million people. Like, our very attractive race, guys and girls, you need to have more sex, right?
Exactly.
You need to have more sex, make babies, populate the country. There's plenty of room, because I think there's a massive bit of potential there for the good of all mankind. There's a lot of ugly races out there. We're not one of them, so I think we should take advantage of that opportunity.
Also, to be fair, we could go with if our FA just did their job and scout the players in the diaspora. If we could get Aracho Chestic and Kalijic and guys like that, we could actually improve the squad a little bit. But we know how that's going to work, and they're going to finish in Austria and Germany and places like that. But what are you going to do?
I think the citizens of the country would enjoy my suggestion more.
I have to agree.
Exactly. Great points, Alex. You've made a lot of great points there. Vlahovic, his poise for his age, it's just unbelievable. He plays like he is not 21, especially for a striker. You don't see that very often. He's so calm. He's so collected. It's really unbelievable.
And also, if I could just make one quick point, one of the things I loved was when he got wrestled down by two Irish defenders and he got right up in their face, and it really seemed to lift the spirit. That happened somewhere around the 32nd, 33rd minute. I don't know if you guys saw that. He got wrestled down after a ball was coming into him, a long cross. And he got
another Irish guy came and pushed him. That's what happened,
he got
right?
into the defender's face, and he was giving them back some, and he wasn't shying, he wasn't backing down, and I think we've needed that. I think we've lacked that somebody who can raise his voice and who can get into the defender's face, because we have the potential to be a bit nasty. I mean, as a country, we're masters of shithousing, really, in every other aspect except sports. So if we can translate that into football, for example, when Nemanja Matic did against Costa Rica at the World Cup, remember at the end of the game, he got up and fought the whole bench by himself. We need more of that. And I think if we did more of that, and if we played uglier in that sense, in terms of getting into other people's heads psychologically, I think that we could really get into people's heads and really do something good. But that's a mentality thing that's going to take a long time. Our mentality is our biggest enemy, because, again, at the end of the game, another point that I forgot to make, no reason for us to panic like we did. No reason to give up that goal, because that goal's not down to communication. It's not down to bad positioning. That's just down to stupidity and just being scared and not being willing to go get a fourth and a fifth. So Pixie, if I'm Pixie, that's what I'm focusing on the most. The tactical stuff, the player selection, that's going to define itself. But it's the psychological state of the players that should be his number one priority, because if he fixes that, I think most of our problems are going to be solved, at least on the pitch.
And he even talked about it in his game, how he had a face-to-face talk with Mitrovic before the game. He told him, don't think about the past. The past is the past. I believe in you, and, we saw what happened. And I don't think any of us were worried about Mitro. I think we all know that he's going to score for a national team no matter what. He showed that again. Hopefully he can, get out of Fulham and find another club where he can play more, because I think he's only 70-something minutes in the last 9 games, which is you're not going to score many.
Military, think about it this way. Military, you can sort of say it this way. If he has a great international window, his club is going to look pretty stupid, isn't it?
No, they already are looking pretty stupid after those 2 goals.
That's what's in my head. You have 3. Okay, it's a little bit unorthodox, but we've got 3 games in 7 days. If he has a fantastic international window, his club and his manager looks a bit silly.
Well, they're going to get relegated, so it is what it is. I mean, he wasn't scoring in the fall, and he lost his spot because of that, basically. But I think for a player like him, player of his qualities, especially considering the lack of depth or any quality they have as striker, he should be playing more. But we'll see what happens. I'm sure Mitro's going to. He tied the record for the all-time goal-scoring record for the national team, Bobek, and I'm sure he's going to pass it in the next game or two, if not the next game after that. So big ups to him. And important thing as well that you guys all mentioned is that certain players were able to be rested. We didn't see SMS. Our engines in midfield, Maksimovic and Gudet, who are our top 2 defensive/central midfielders, they both played very little in this game. They came on in the second half, so their legs will be nice and rested when they'll have to run a lot against Portugal. And also Lazovic Kostic also rested for this game, so can't fault. It's a great thing to have, and then we were able to do it in the first game. I think we all expected to have the rest against Azerbaijan, but that in itself would be very tricky and very foolish, because they can easily shock you at home, especially when we're going after 2 games, long flight and all that. So in the end, I think it's a smart move he did, resting some players against Ireland, but also very risky, and we're fortunate that it paid off.
Also, I just want to point out, he wouldn't have done it, I think, if Ireland had a fully fit team, but considering they were missing 4 or 5 players, and you look at how congested the schedule is, I think it made sense he made those subs, not just because we won. I looked at the lineup and I thought, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, they're injured, and I think the team, like I tweeted out, I think the team was good enough to win. I think all 3 of us think that the team, even as present without some of the starters, was good enough to win. So I don't really see an issue with that. And even Pavlovic, who was maybe a surprise to some, considering that we don't really have any left-footed center backs who can dribble and take the ball out, and he proved to be great at that because he was really good in that sense, and he was very good defensively as well, which was a big change. The changes he made were requisite, and I think also you need to see what guys can do, and I think that putting guys in situations where maybe they're unexpected, maybe is a really good, forging in the fire. I think maybe for someone like Vlahovic or somebody else, even like Nora Šračić, for example, who was unexpected, it's a really good test because if they can handle this pressure, because there was a lot of pressure going in this game, I think we can all agree on that. It's the first game, new manager, start of the qualifying cycle against your main rival, and most of the guys that started that were new choices, if you will, I think played pretty well or didn't really do anything terrible. Gajic and the enemies weren't great, but they weren't, I don't think they did anything particularly wrong. We know that Jodicic was good, and Ačić was progressively getting better as the game went on. So I think they all passed that test, and I think it's good to see that we have a big rotation. And I think it's a double-edged sword in terms of the lineup, and I'll finish on this because the Portugal lineup is something that's falling all over our heads because I have no clue what we're going to go with. But it's good in the fact that I think we have 2 or 3 players that really stick out, and about 10, 15, or 20 that are of similar quality that can change, which is good because it shows the depth we have and it shows that we can play against teams in many different ways. So I'm interested to see how Pixie handles that, and hopefully he has a chat with them and says, listen, all of you guys are important, all of you guys are going to get minutes, but for this game I need this, and for that game I'm going to need that. You're going to get your chances, and hopefully if he can handle the egos, I think that we could be in a really good position where guys can come off the bench. Because if we have great firepower on the bench, for example, we have Mitrovic and Kostic and SMS on the bench, that's where we can make a difference, not just because of the quality they have, but because of also the physical strength we have. Because all of our players are tall, most of them are strong, some of them are fast, and they're great substitution options. And if we can utilize our bench in a better way, I think that we could really be in trouble for most teams and really pull off those late comeback wins that Really was alluding to earlier.
Yeah, and also, as Lucas said it best earlier, I think. He said this is a work in progress, and I agree with that. You can clearly see that because he has a plan. Yeah, I think you can already see that the players believe in him. He had chat with Tadic, chat with Mitrovic, and, they had one of their best games in a while. So that's also encouraging. All the pictures from the trainings, everybody's smiling, having a good time. Mm-hmm. So it's like the atmosphere is much better already since he's come in, and that's going to be a major key going forward. And yeah, Alex, as you mentioned earlier, this is a big step towards getting to at least the playoffs because Ireland's our main competition, and we already got 3 points against them. Hopefully we can not drop points to Luxembourg and Azerbaijan, and we should be able to finish top 2. On to our next game, though, Saturday against Portugal. No rest at all. Luca, what are your expectations? What are you hoping to carry over and see in the big game on Saturday?
Hey, man, I'm on the Pixie train. I'm expecting all 9 points from 3 games, so I'm expecting a win against Portugal. But, there were some things that Pixie said in that post-game interview as well that I really, really liked. When he was, complimenting all the players, he said Vlahovic had a great game. Obviously, Mitrovic speaks for itself this game. And then he also called out Pavlovic, said fantastic. But when it came to Dusan Tadic, he said he had a captain's game, but he could do even better. And I love that, man, because I don't think as great of a game that Dusan Tadic had, 3 assists, I think that wasn't even his ceiling. I think Pixie knows that. I think Pixie knows he can get more out of him. I think even Tadic knows because Pixie said he talked to him, and they're both on the same page. So I love that, man. I love that he's motivating him in that way, and that Tadic just can't rest on one good game.
He did. He went in and out a little bit. On the
yes.
the Ireland game.
Yeah.
So I agree with you.
Right. Yeah. So exactly. So I like that, man. So I think they're both on the same page there, and that Tadic definitely has room to even improve off of that, which is definitely scary for any opposition. One thing that I will say for this Portugal game, it's very interesting that we didn't see SMS in the game, even as a sub.
Because he will start against Portugal. Look, there you are, brother.
We'll see, man. We'll see, because here's what I'm thinking, man. As Stojkovic talks about, is all about the mentality and the approach to the game. And I think with SMS, he is a little susceptible to, when things are not going his way, to slow down, to just drift out of the game. And maybe Pixie has seen some of that in practice or whatever, or maybe just even from talking to him. So if we don't see him start in the Portugal game, that's going to be a very interesting development. Now, I really hope he does start. I hope that's not the case, obviously, and I hope he does put him in that box-to-box midfield role, so he can really shine. As far as Portugal, I watched the highlights against Azerbaijan, and first of all, that shout out to the Azerbaijani keeper, man. That guy had a game of his life.
He had a game of his life.
I mean, some of those saves he was making were unreal, man. But at the same time, it took an own goal from Azerbaijan for Portugal to win that game. So that's a little promising for us, especially with our defense. So, I know I said I'm expecting a win. I'll do with a draw. I really will, and I think anybody here would as well. So I'm just excited for this game. Once again, I'm not in a fearful state as I would be if Tombakovic or somebody else was coaching, especially Krstajic. I think the poise that they showed against Ireland, going down and able to go and win that game the way they did. I think that speaks a lot to what Pixie brings to the table, and I think that poise will translate into the next game, and it'll just keep snowballing into something great down the line. So I'm very much looking forward to Saturday.
And when you said compare it to Krstajic, one more thing that's different is Pixie looked very calm on the line.
Yes.
He was ripping his hair out, hitting things, looking like he was about to lose his mind, like we see with Krstajic
Right.
at times, right? So that's another thing, which is part of his character, which is very positive. Veli, what are your thoughts going into Portugal?
Okay, hear me out. I believe this will happen. I think Nemanja Gudel will start in place of Uroš Račić. I reckon Mihailo Ristic will start in context of the Island game, of course. I think Mihailo Ristic will start in front of Filip Mladenovic. I think that Sergej Milinkovic-Savic will start instead of Dusan Vlahovic. Vlahovic, I reckon, will be rested and being told on to make a spark in the second half, depending on what the situation of the game is, whereby I believe that Pixie will have a word to him and say, listen, you're full of confidence, you had a really, really good game. This game is against Portugal. I'm going to use you in a different role, whereby I want you to draw upon your good form, draw upon your confidence, and hopefully change the game for us. And I believe that Lazovic will start in front of Milan Gage on the right-hand side, and I reckon they will be the changes. So I think that SMS will be given the challenge to saying that, okay, this is a top-class international, competitive international. You're going to start. Okay, Siena, let's see that what you can do. Show me what you can do, and then I think Stojkovic will make the changes accordingly. So I think I've just got this feeling about that's what will happen, and then we'll see the introduction of Vlahovic, we'll see the introduction of Mitrovic thereafter, and then we'll see that we'll see what comes from there.
That's right. Show me the money, as the movie says. But you're right. You got to give a chance to see what they could do. We saw this with Pavlovic. We saw this in the last game with Vlahovic as well. How are you going to know what these young players are capable of if you don't give them these opportunities in important games?
I get the feeling with SMS, his ego is bigger than his second names. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just it's there, and I think to say, okay, buddy, okay, let's see what you can do, right? This is how I want you to play, because one of those things in those the matches post the Scotland debacle in that Nations League was that SMS could play up top. He himself, he was good in the air. He could hold the ball up, and obviously he is capable of a trick or two. So I've got no issue with leaving SMS as the pure number 9. So yeah, I would throw the Pepsi challenge out to him.
Don't you think that playing SMS as a number 9 is sort of taking away from his game, especially his passing game, because he definitely can make some incisive passes that can definitely open up the defense?
I agree, but I just see him there against Portugal, because of course it's not just Ronaldo, and I reckon that you guys probably saw that almost 180-degree no-look pass he did against Azerbaijan a couple of days ago, and like I was thinking far out Brussels sprout, that was really, really good. But we also got that guy from Manchester United, Bruno, whatever it is, name I've got a
Fernandes.
Mental blank. Yeah, Fernandes, of course. I reckon Gudel could do a holding job on him or Sasha Lukic, either one of those two.
Probably not Lukic.
I know, but
Maksimovic is probably there.
It all depends how deep he starts. Do you know what I mean? So if he's playing right up top and not as the last guy, then yeah, Maksimovic could. But if Bruno Fernandes drops into the midfield, then I see Gudel, following him around a lot. So it will be interesting to see. I reckon there will be the changes to the lineup and bring it on. Bring it on. We've got something to prove. Most of those players played against the Portugal game in Belgrade, where like Luke and I were there. We were outclassed. Let's not beat around the bullshit. We were outclassed, and I remember our people were shouting Messi, Messi, Messi every time Ronaldo got the ball. And I'm thinking, people, you're adding fuel to the fire. You know what I mean? Like, this guy will score against us now. And guess what happened? He did, right? So, sometimes I swear that I reckon our crowd should be able to get alcohol sold to our crowd, because something intelligent might come out of their mouth, let alone the stupidity that does. So, for God's sake, sell them Budweiser light beer, and I reckon, there'll be like it'll be like an opera crowd. You know what I mean? So, but another subject for another day. So that's what I see for the Portugal game.
I agree with you, Willie. I think SMS will start. I think he'll probably start and play where we saw Tadic play later in the game against Ireland. He'll probably be behind the two guys up front, which will probably be Vlahovic and maybe Tadic. So we'll see what happens. I think SMS will start. I think Pixie will give him this opportunity to show himself in a big game, and I think he's more than enough to get the job done. Alexa, what are your thoughts going into the Portugal game?
Well, when you consider the Portugal team, which I think is ultimately what I'm going to have to try and focus on, because we more or less know what we're going to do. A lot's going to depend on how they play. We're going to need them to play below their best, because if they play at their best, we can't beat them. I think it's just, it's not being insulting. It's not trying to disrespect us. It's just, I think they're one of the three best teams in Europe right now. But the good news, when you look at the stamina, is that I think that the resting decision from Pixie was great and really played out in his favor because of how the Azerbaijan game went. Ronaldo played 90 minutes. João Cancelo played 90 minutes. Andre Silva played 85 minutes. Bruno Fernandes played a whole half. Now, granted, the intensity of the game against Azerbaijan is not the same as the intensity of the game against us, but I think it could lead to our most fit players, or rather some of our best players being fully fit, while they're only going to be partially fit. Now, the strategic situation itself is interesting because, as a few of my good friends did the great analysis of the three upcoming games on YouTube. One of the great things they pointed out was that Portugal actually allows teams to really pass the ball around. They actually allow a lot of teams to not necessarily gather possession, but to pass the ball around. And even in the Belgrade game that you mentioned, Veli, I remember that we had a lot of times when we were trying to pass between the back four and the defensive midfielders, and we were trying to organize attacks. The thing with Portugal is they defend so well with their midfield, which is why I think packing the midfield and actually pushing SMS into a deeper role might be the answer, because his physicality, his quick touches, his size, his height especially, because he's tall, could come in really handy. But it would require packing the midfield more. I think it's going to require maybe putting less options up top, because the current formation we have is a 3-4-2-1. I would argue that maybe like a 3-5-1-1 or something like that, where we take one of the guys away from the forward line and put him in the midfield. It gives us two options. A, it allows SMS to roam more freely, which is what he does at Lazio, because they stack the midfield. I mean, they play a 3-6-1 basically, with Parolo and with, Senna Lulic and whoever else is there. They also have other guys who can fit in, and it allows us to try and break down their block, because I think we saw even in the Ireland game as time was going on that we actually had some nice passing combinations. We just didn't have a touch, but in the midfield, we were actually able to string some passes together and get some sort of an advantage, whether it was on the fullback side or whether it was in the half spaces where the attacking midfielders usually operate. So I would say when you look at the amount of midfield options we have right now, they haven't even played, Grujic, Ilic, Rakic, who played, didn't play a full game. Maksimovic, good. We have a lot of options in midfield, guys that can run, guys that are technically capable on the ball, and guys that are strong and that are tall. And I think that's going to be crucial. Breaking down Portugal's midfield, if we can do that, I'm convinced that we can get more goals because we know what their attack's going to do. We know our defense is a dumpster fire. But the goal is to try to maintain, I think, as much possession as we can. So I think if we try to limit the counterattacks, which is me getting back, I think that we have a shot. We saw in the Belgrade game individual errors cost us, whether it was Nikola Maksimovic, whether it was Matic even making some mistakes. Allowing the quick counterattacks is a very big threat. If we can stop their counterattacks by getting everyone behind the ball, shoot from long distance, I think that we could have a real chance. The important thing is not to give them the ball in a midfield situation where they could have a quick counterattack. Even a possession-based Portugal, but they're trying to pass the ball between us, that's dangerous as well. But I think we've proven in this system and formation that we can stop that really well. We can block shots. We can have guys that can come out and intercept passes. Quick transition defending is by far our worst trait. And I think that that's where the responsibility of Kostic and Lazovic comes in to make sure that Ronaldo and Fernandes and Jota and whoever plays in the wings doesn't get a chance to break free, because the midfield talent that they have, from Fernandes to Pereira to Carvalho to whoever else is there, they all have the technical capacity to just ping one ball, and any of their attackers against any one of our defenders is a huge mismatch. So defending in numbers is going to be crucial. It's going to depend on a really good physical approach, which I think is going to be possible because I think we're going into that game more fit. I think we're going into that game in a better situation. And I think early on we've seen that Portugal can make mistakes in qualifying. I mean, even in the early parts of qualifying around Europe, France drew with Ukraine, Croatia lost to Slovenia, Netherlands lost to Turkey. I think that these early games, especially with a lack of time together and with the congested fixture schedule, can allow surprises to happen. Now, the unfortunate thing is that Portugal has a team that's been together for a very long time, but I think that our physical capacity or our stamina and our physical conditioning could prove crucial in this game from that midfield defensive aspect, because the most important thing is to stop their transition. I actually am not that scared of them in 11-on-11 build-up, but if you give them a counterattack, we're screwed. I think it's just a fact. In an attacking sense, I think we've proven we can score against them. I think we've proven, even whether it was with Mitro, whether it was with Tadic, whether it was with Juricic, we have enough guys who are smart, who know how to move between the lines, who know how to break that 4-1-4-1 defensive block. Because, for example, Juricic faces a lot of that in Serie A. Mitrovic, just because of his size and because of his willpower, finds ways to create positions. And their center back pairing, even though Ruben Dias has been great for Man City, he's been great because of the system he's playing in. He's not exactly individually been amazing. They don't have Pepe. Jose Fonte's kind of old. You don't know who the other partner is going to be. So I think that their center backs are probably the weakest part of the team. And I think that, as I said, defending in numbers and maybe trying to push on counterattacks like that, I think is going to be another important part, which is why I would go with Mitrovic. And that would be, I guess, my closing part. We saw in the Ireland game that we were really struggling to move the ball away from into the midfield. Now, Portugal's going to allow us more time and space to string passes together. But even with that being said, their movement, their intelligence is going to be such that even them not pressing us would still feel like they're pressing us. And you need to have somebody who can play long balls, who can win those headers, and who can knock the ball down. I'm not saying that SMS can't do that, because I think playing him in a false nine role, for example, is a really good idea. I'd like to see that happen because I think it would allow for more flexibility behind him. But I think it also means that we would lose a really strong part in the midfield. I think the midfield battle, as I've mentioned many times, is going to be the absolute key in a strategic sense, which is why I would pack the midfield. And I think Mitrovic has proven, and whether it would be Vlahovic or whoever, that they're more than capable of handling it on their own. And if you have somebody making runs from the second plan, which is another thing that was pointed out, in the France game, for example, N'Golo Kante scored on the rebound. The ball came into the box and was deflected on the edge of the penalty area, and he got a good chance to shoot. Certainly, because we're going to have somebody who's going to be tall and strong in the box, the crosses coming in are inevitably going to be coming out to the edge of the box. And we've seen with SMS, we've seen with Maksimovic, with Gude, we have guys who can, A, get into the box efficiently, and B, shoot from distance. So I would try and look for that, and I think that's where Mitrovic's role, and Tadic and Juricic's role as well, in terms of picking up those balls, could be crucial as well, because those second balls was one of the things that was important against Norway. It wasn't the Mitrovic header that was crucial. It was the fact we had guys who could pick that up and then organize a counterattack. And in this situation as well, if the ball comes to somebody on the edge of the box, we know we have guys who can shoot. We've seen in the Ireland game, very evidently, we have guys who can shoot from distance. So I think it's making sure to prevent the counterattacks, defending in numbers and possession, and allowing our best players in attack to have the freedom. Because I really think that Tadic and Mitrovic and those guys can do serious damage against Portugal's center-back partnership, which has always been shaky, even in the best of times. I mean, even in the Portugal game last year, or 2 years ago, rather, it was a quick counterattack where Tadic played a long ball into Gacinovic on a quick situation. We got the penalty, and then we scored. They haven't changed much from that, and we have better attacking options now. So I think that those are some of the bullet points that I would look for. And, of course, the final point I would make, Kostic and Lazovic to be on an exceptional physical form, because not only are they going to have to go back and forth and attack and cross the ball, they're going to have their hands full defensively. So making sure that those guys in the midfield can help them out as well is another reason why I would pack the midfield, maybe play with 5 in the midfield if necessary and take one of the attacking options off. But with that being said, maybe Pixie goes to 4th. He doesn't go for 3 because of the issues we have in defense. So it leaves a lot of options. It's a good thing for us. I think we have a lot of different players who can answer many different challenges and tasks that Portugal give. And I'm going into this game more confident in getting a result than I did before the start of this 3-game cycle.
For sure, and we have the confidence now after getting a big win. And we actually had a couple big wins in a row. If you remember the Russia game and Ireland, so we're on some
Monty, here I'm gonna say this. If we beat Portugal on the weekend and we beat Azerbaijan and we get 9 points out of 9, we are going to the World Cup.
Bold statement, yeah. Well,
I'm telling you, we are. If we get 9 points out of 9, it's a big if. Absolutely. You know, and let that be my closing comment, apart from my shout out, of course. But we will go to the World Cup.
Hey, Valley, let me counter you with a prediction of my own. If we get 9 out of 9 points from the first 3 games, we're not even going to make second place and won't go to the playoffs.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Good reverse jinx. Good reverse jinx on that.
Exactly.
And you know, I think it's going to be, you know, regardless of if we win or lose, I think it's going to be a really good football game. Our team has a lot of quality. Portugal has a lot of quality. Both playing a nice style of football. I think it's going to be a really awesome game to watch, regardless of what happens. And it's exciting. We have many options, of course, apart from defense, but we have many options, many players that can step up. I'm sure it's going to be a very good game to watch, and hopefully we can get at least a draw out of this and, you know, cement our position in this group and get one step closer to qualifying for Qatar. And, Mel, you mentioned it, so I'm going to let you close the show off with your shout-outs as per usual.
Guys, I have to do this because it's sensational. I'll send you the YouTube clip right after the pod, and then maybe Miloš, you can put it on your Twitter account. A massive shout out to the St. George Serbian Football Club in the Brisbane Premier League, which is in the state of Queensland. They're a club that's only been around for just over a decade. Let's just put it this way: they made the state news on television. Football is not the biggest sport here in Australia. You know, you have things like cricket and Australian football and rugby league and rugby union, all that in front of it. So let's just say they made the news for all the wrong reasons, but somehow they managed to win that game with 7 players left on the field. They are 3-0 in their first 3 rounds, so a massive shout out to the Sveta Georgia Football Club in the Brisbane Premier League in Queensland. So, Monty, just keep it up for all the right reasons this time.
Well, hopefully, looking forward to seeing that video.
Yeah, I'll send you the video, but when it says after all happened, you'll see it didn't have the football in general in the greatest light. And then the last thing the journalist said, and St. George managed to win the game with 7 players left on the field. Fantastic.
Gotta love it. All right, big win against Ireland, and hopefully another big result on the weekend against Portugal. Finally, some exciting times. Hey, we didn't even mention that Sasha Cook is a step down as FA president, which is another positive thing this week. Everything is coming up roses. Spring is in the air, and hopefully the good times continue on Saturday. Talk to you all next week.
Absolutely. Take care, guys.